we are super appreciative for you taking an hour out of all of your to-dos to discuss the OST workforce. If everybody can do a couple of things before we really launch into it, can you rename yourself in Zoom with your pronouns and your organization? And can you introduce yourself in the chat? And let's have a question of the day, something that you're looking forward to, a holiday tradition that you do with your family, chosen family, friends, whatever. Let's share those with each other. So take a minute to do that while we launch into our agenda for the day. So what we're going to do today is talk about workforce. We have talked about workforce in September and also in November. And I'm sure many of you are talking about workforce every day. And so we're going to just continue that conversation in community. So we, like all of you, have been hearing a lot about all of the challenges facing the OST workforce. And when we talked in September, our emphasis was on what's happening right now, what are the crises, how are people solving them, and really sharing innovative solutions that people were coming up with so that this community can bring its expertise to each other and learn from each other. So we talked in September about different innovative ways to turn part-time jobs into full-time jobs that folks were doing, innovative ways to get at sharing opportunities for that open staff positions that people had, and we also talked about trying to tap into the various ESSER and American Rescue Plan dollars in various places, both school districts and municipalities, et cetera, to use those resources to boost wages and in other ways that would attract the workforce. We also talked about supporting staff and supporting staff's self-care, mental health, dealing with trauma and secondary trauma. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Erik Peterson in a second or so he can give us a little bit of an update about any of those things, anything new that you know about all of those things. And then in November, we skipped October because that's GFE conference. And then in November, we talked about supporting leaders of color with the Pinkerton Foundation and their Advanced Leadership Network, which they've just this year launched, and also National Afterschool Association's Next Generation Leadership cohort, and how they are providing opportunities for young folks in the field and people of color in the field to exercise their own leadership. And so that's where we are. Today, we're going to talk about the potential of all of us together thinking about a long-term comprehensive agenda that deals with all the issues that we can possibly identify that we need to solve to get to a place where the OST workforce is well paid, sustained, high quality, and has professional development opportunities, career pathways, et cetera. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. But I am first going to turn to Erik to give us a little bit of an update. Also Build Back Better, but probably we don't have much to say, sadly, on that. But Erik, tell us what you know. And welcome.
Thanks. Good afternoon / morning, everybody. Thanks so much, Kathleen and Rebecca, for having me on again. I will try to be brief, which is hard for me, but pull up notes here. So Build Back Better, we'll start there briefly. Hopefully folks have been kind of following that and following our blogs and that, and I can drop the blog link, our most recent one from a couple weeks ago that has the House language of what passed just before Thanksgiving. The news out of the Senate this week, they do have language now, sort of draft language. The good news is it's pretty similar, especially in the out of school time pieces that we're following, including the $5 billion funding for community violence prevention and trauma training that community-based organizations could access, the AmeriCorps Corporation for Community Service changes around increasing the stipend and expanding there. That's in the Senate language we saw from the Help Committee this week, as well as some of the youth workforce piece and the child care pieces, which, as folks I think know, focuses mostly on the new entitlement program for birth to 5. But as a result of that, and states that opt into the new program should free up significant more funds for school age through Child Care Development Block Grant that after school and summer youth programs should be able to tap into. So the late breaking news on Build Back Better is that people are still crossing their fingers that it might pass the Senate or at least get a vote on the Senate before the holiday recess for Congress. That was officially put to rest last night. And so nothing will happen on Build Back Better until January at the earliest. Senate's really only in session 1 week in January, and it's not the same week as the House. So logistic issues there, but an opportunity for more advocacy until hopefully we'll see a vote in the Senate. Still expecting it to be a lot less money overall than the House bill, but hopefully some of the key pieces that we're following from a school time perspective will survive there. And then I've been asked to do a couple of updates based on what we talked about, I guess 2 months ago now when I was on. One of the things we flagged was in terms of the workforce and staffing challenges that programs are facing, that there's a significant amount of money in American Rescue Plan that can be used for, sorry, multitasking, which is never a good idea for me. Here's the Build Back Better blog. Significant amount of money in the American Rescue Plan for premium pay or bonuses, which again is not a long-term solution to the staffing salary challenges, but is an immediate that can help for some programs compensate staff a little more than more closer to what is a fair wage for some programs. That continues, and we wanted to do a quick update on some of the things we've seen as a result of that. Unfortunately, not a lot of examples from the local level of programs that have been able to tap into those funds. I have a couple of state examples of further what states are doing to provide resources to programs and to staff at programs. The one local example that I thought was interesting that we're trying to continue to learn more about, and some folks may be familiar with it, but comes out of Virginia Beach, Virginia, which is in southeastern Virginia, in the Norfolk area. And it's a park and rec program there that actually made news earlier in the fall because they were going to close 14 programs due to staffing shortages, and that would be effective January 3rd. The good news is, so obviously a lot of families upset and folks in the community that were depending on that for school age programs after school. Most of the programs were held at Park and Rec centers. Some were held at schools or other sites as well by Park and Rec in Virginia Beach. The good news is that as a result of sort of the backlash, they were able to learn more and get creative and use some state and local fiscal recovery fund dollars from the American Rescue Plan. And they were able to increase, they have been paying $9.50 an hour for staff, which was one of the challenges of the staffing shortage there, and increased that to $15 an hour. After they made that announcement, they had an immediate 120 applications that came through for those positions. And so are able to reopen and not close most of those 14 sites. They're still working through it, on January 3rd when they were supposedly going to be closed. An example of these funds, are available and can be used. Again, not a long-term solution, but an immediate help in some cases that's needed. We've seen similar things in Boston, where again the state and the local city funds through the state and local fiscal recovery fund, through the American Rescue Plan, through the Department of Treasury, were able to be used for childcare, both early care and school age programs. At the state level, Colorado, Illinois, Maine, Michigan, and New Jersey are all the states that we're most familiar with that are using a variety of different funds. In some cases, New Jersey, it's state money through their Child Care Revitalization Fund. again, to be able to provide, bonuses or stipends anywhere from $1,000 per person just on top of what they're making now. In New Jersey, in Michigan, able to do a 30% rate increase through providers to pass on to their staff. In Maine, still working out the details, but trying to provide additional funds for bonuses and benefits for school age and early care workers in licensed and license exempt programs, and similar stories in other states as well. The last thing I was going to flag, and then I'm probably already exceeded my 5 minutes, is a quick update on the background check challenges that we also mentioned on the call a couple months ago. That still is a challenge, although we were hearing less of that from local programs. And I will flag that the Interagency Task Force on Child Safety, which is a task force led by the Administration for Children and Families at HHS, that includes the FBI, Department of Ed, a number of other agencies involved, met most of this year, including getting testimony on the school age challenges around background checks earlier in the fall and late summer. Haven't seen the report yet, but they have a report due with recommendations to Congress that should be this month or next month, in hopes that some changes can be made to address some of the challenges that we've all talked about here and seen at the local level, as well as other challenges around the background check requirement that's part of the Child Care Development Block Grant law. So hopefully more to come on that as well. And then just want to see if folks had any updates or insights to share, examples of bright spots or new challenges. And I'll open the floor for that and also throw it back to Kathleen or Rebecca.
Great. Thank you so much, Erik. I did put in the chat, if anybody has comments or questions for Erik, please just throw them in the chat. I know Erik can probably answer things right in the chat as we go. And also, Erik, if you could just throw your email in there too. You just said just an enormous number of things, which are really, really helpful and hopeful. And so anybody who needs more information about anything so that you can figure out how to do it in your community, please make sure that you follow with Erik. But we do have a minute or so where if somebody does want to share something that maybe, it seems to me that the Afterschool Alliance has their finger on the pulse of pretty much everything that's going on. But if you've got something that they don't know about, then feel free to unmute yourself and throw that in here for everyone else in the community to know.
How about I share something that we do know about? We have our pulse on a lot, and it is exhausting, but the timing is so important. So this is completely embargoed. It will not be public until January, but as many of you know, we have been doing surveys of the field. We just completed our 6th survey to really get a sense of what's happening on the ground to programs in the here and now. And so this survey took place between the beginning of November and it closed out on December 13th. So really in the present, we had over 1,000 programs respond. And what we found, so some of the key takeaways are: 1, about 45% of programs are operating at pre-COVID levels, which is good. But more than that, 46% are operating at reduced capacity, and that's because of a host of reasons. And that of the programs that are open, more than half, so 54%, are actually reporting wait lists. So the demand, again, we're dealing with is much larger than what we can provide. And this is the programs that were operating before. The number one concern of programs is staff shortages. So this is as timely as ever. 71% of programs report that they are extremely or very concerned about staffing. And 74% of providers have reported that it's they're really struggling. So not just concerned, but they are actually struggling with staffing. And that 53%, so I know a lot of numbers, but 53% of the programs have actually increased salaries in an effort to recruit more staff, and 15% have been doing sign-on bonuses, but that doesn't seem to be enough to be dealing with the fact that this is a number one concern and that so many are still struggling with retaining and recruiting staff. So
thanks for that, Jodi. And so do you know when you're going to release that publicly?
Yeah, we're going to be releasing this publicly in January. So this is literally like hot off the press just for this meeting. So the big takeaway is we are not close to demand, that many of our programs still can't operate at full capacity, and that staffing is the #1 priority. And we'll have actual, anecdotes from the open-ended questions and more information in January.
Okay, that sounds good. And Grace just has a quick question about the second percentage. I assume that she means the second thing that you said. If
I
you
don't-
have your notes, because it went a little fast.
I'm gonna
Grace,
repeat these, but you guys can't repeat them. So
okay.
So it was 45% of programs are operating at the levels they were before COVID. 46% are operating at a reduced capacity. That probably depends on, and again, like this is very fresh, but what areas of the country they're in. That 54% of the programs that are open right now have waiting lists. 71% of programs report being extremely or very concerned about staffing. 74% say that they're actually having issues with hiring and retaining staff. And 71%, right? So that's a lot. It's almost 3/4 of programs have done things to try to recruit staff. And that has included 53% of programs increasing salaries and 15% providing sign-on bonuses.
Okay. All right, great. And when you do release the report, will you break that out by?
No, we
state
don't
or
have enough
geography?
to do it by state.
Okay.
And I don't know about geography. That's a Nikki question, and we can answer that in January. And we promise, as soon as this is live, to send it to you all. We'll send it to Kathleen and to everyone.
Okay, yes, definitely. We'll put it on the website. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Jodi. So that brings me to what we don't know, right? What we don't know about the workforce, which is a lot. And if we do want to ever get to a comprehensive, effective workforce development vision and strategy, we all need to know a lot more about who the youth workforce is, what their experiences are. And so luckily, as most of you know, the Wallace Foundation has funded an effort that will provide just those answers. And Aleah Rosario is joining us for a number of reasons today, but the first reason is to give us an update about the Allied Youth Workforce Survey. So welcome, Aleah, and it is yours.
Great. Thank you. And good morning, or maybe good afternoon. Thanks for allowing me to be here. I'm Aleah Rosario. I'm with the Partnership for Children and Youth, and also serve as a co-chair of an advisory group that's informing this Youth Fields Workforce Survey. And so we are very excited to share with you that the Power of Us campaign will launch early next year, with the goal of surveying the youth serving professionals from a variety of different sectors, including after school, parks and rec, libraries, coaches, nature-based programs, and so much more. This is administered by the American Institutes for Research and a constellation of partners, as Kathleen said, with funding from the Wallace Foundation. You can move to the next slide, Rebecca. The Power of Us campaign is really about finding the power within the youth serving professionals, to find their strengths, to really talk about, not only individual stories, but what the power of this community is, of adults that are working with children and youth. And so what's really exciting about this campaign is about highlighting individual stories. And we really want youth professionals to see themselves reflected in the imagery, in the quotes, in the stories, so that we can really amplify, the real lived experiences and tell the story of this workforce. So the strategy of the campaign is to feature the faces of the professionals, and then, and by then get them to complete the survey, right? If they see themselves in the imagery, they will want to be a part of defining the workforce. So think of this as the humans of New York for the youth serving workforce. And we welcome you all and your grantees and the communities you work with to contribute to this and to be a part of this. We want your grantees and networks to see themselves reflected in this campaign. And so a variety of team members are on here today. So if you have questions about how to get connected, please definitely ask those in the chat and we can connect with you all. If you could go to the next slide, great. So, Kathleen set this up. Part of the need for this survey is that we need to know more about the youth field's workforce to ensure that we're developing responsive, accurate policies, strategies, and approaches to our workforce challenges. And so, knowing more about who the workforce is will help us prioritize what efforts are needed to further, of course, strengthen the career pathways and experiences of the people that work in this field and to inform the policy changes. And I just have to say, I think like we'll get to this a little bit later, but the work I've been doing over the last several years of trying to to figure out what strategies are needed to address real immediate workforce issues that we're experiencing now takes looking at longer term strategies and policy changes that will impact many years to come. And it's really hard to do that without knowing who the workforce is. And so I think you go to the last slide, Rebecca, to give you a little bit of a sense of the timeline. Is that the campaign will formally launch mid-February. We'll come back and talk with you all about the campaign, I think early next year. And you can see it's a year-long campaign. And so there will be several touch points over the next year and targeted ways to engage with you all, to give you all updates and to ensure that we get a strong response rate so that we are truly telling the story of this workforce.
That's fabulous. And so definitely reach out in the chat to the team. And I think this is a project that we will be following all along. We will be amplifying whenever that makes sense. And we are super, super excited for this entire thing. So thank you to Aleah and everybody on that team for that. Okay, so Aleah, you're gonna stay on and be part of the panel that we're gonna do in a couple of minutes. Rebecca, could you throw those slides up again? So as always, we're pressed for time. And what we're gonna do today is crowdsource the emphasis of our conversation. So I talked earlier about envisioning this comprehensive workforce agenda. And I think certainly with the results of the survey, we will be able to know a lot more about informing all of these things. But we also don't want to wait that long. And people are doing this work all the time. I don't want to say that you're not. But we want to start to think about talking in and envisioning a comprehensive way to look at all of the challenges and thinking about this from somewhat of an ecosystem perspective. Like there are roles for everybody, no matter what your organization is, no matter what your geography is, in all of these things. And so how can we begin to really, as a field, understand how all these components of what needs to happen fit together, and how we can best leverage everybody's own expertise and talent, resources, and ingenuity to move the field forward. So we came up with this, and I want to say that this is just we're just throwing this out here. This is not anything that's developed or it's just like an iteration. Okay, so that these are all the sort of buckets that we can think of things that need to happen over the long term. Compensation and benefits. And I'm saying these are just, we don't have the solutions. These are just the buckets. So compensation and benefits is the whole thing. Advancement opportunities and career pathways. Supporting staff well-being, particularly in the now, but this is clearly something that predates everything that's happening now, but is incredibly intense now. Providing professional development opportunities that are going to get the workforce to the places that they need to go, including credentials and post-secondary opportunities. Really looking at how to support and develop BIPOC leaders, and we talked about that last month. We're going to continue to talk about that, and also ensuring that that after-school programs are anti-racist workspaces where people can stay and flourish. And increasing overall recognition and respect for the workforce and the field. And then finally, building organizational stability and capacity, that is for providers, intermediaries, policy advocates, everybody in the space. And so throwing those things out, and these are going to get repeated, because what we're going to do for the rest of the time that we have today is have you vote which thing we're going to make you choose. Which thing would you like the panel to focus on most? We're going to take the top two, and then we're going to bring Aleah and Jodi and Terri Foulkes, who's here from the Missouri Afterschool Network, to lead a conversation about the top two. So obviously this is not the be all and end all conversation that we're ever going to have, but this is the way we're going to spend our time today. And then we're going to look at least for the OST Impact Group, we will look at continuing and digging into these conversations in a number of different ways in 2022. So submit your vote for what you would like the conversation to most focus on for the next half hour. Okay, cool. So looks like there's like a lot of ties.
But there's a number one.
Okay. We're definitely going to talk about developing advancement opportunities and career pathways. And then we're going to talk about a lot of other things because there's a lot of 13 percenters. But why don't let's keep this in our back pocket, and let's start out by talking about the career advancement. So, so let's bring into the spotlight Jodi, Aleah, and Terri. So I'd like to start out. We haven't, we brought Aleah on, and you gave us that awesome couple of slides about the youth workforce survey, but we didn't really give you a chance to intro yourself about all the different things you do and the roles that you play. So let's do that first before we launch in.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm with the Partnership for Children and Youth, and I oversee all the organization's capacity building and technical assistance efforts to expand the learning and after-school programs across the state. And previous to that, I was with the California Afterschool Network. I see my friend Jeff on the call here, and really spent a couple of years focusing very strategically on what strategies and policies are needed to advance the expanded learning workforce in California. Pre-COVID, we were looking at 35 to 40,000 workers just that worked in publicly funded after school programs. And so, really trying to recognize not only what individual organizations are doing and can do to support their workforce, but what are the system level, strategies that are needed to really recognize the strength of the workforce in the state. So previous to that, I worked for continued to work in capacity building and technical assistance roles, and just really was excited to take a deep dive into this area specifically.
Great, welcome. And Terri, welcome to you too. Will you just give us a, quick sum of what's happening at the Missouri Afterschool Network, who you are, and what brings you here right now?
Great. Thank you for having me with you guys. My name is Terri Foulkes. I'm the executive director of the Missouri Afterschool Network. And we do a lot of the same work that Aleah just described as far as working in the areas of policy, partnership, and quality development. I've been with the network now for 10 years. And prior to that, I was with our state's registry system, which are often associated with early childhood initiatives, but ours from the time that I was there, starting in 2003, was always a very integrated early childhood and after school registry system, which gives me experience and perspective in the areas of kind of the quality supports with the registry, the quality rating and improvement system, a lot of the data collection measures that go into supporting the workforce. So I'm happy to be here this morning and look forward to sharing some of the things that we're doing in Missouri.
Okay, that's great. So why don't we let's start with Jodi as we dig into what people crowdsource to talk about. So advancement opportunities, career pathways in the field. And what we'd like to keep the focus on for this conversation is policy and financing, right? And which is just exactly where you live. And what are some ways that we can envision using policy and financing strategies to make progress on this?
So we've been trying to do a lot of outside the box thinking. And also, I think Aleah, this survey of the field is going to be huge. Because first of all, when we think about staff, and we had this conversation in our prep call, there's really more than one level of staff, right? So we need to be thinking about the direct service on the ground staff, and then the people who, and they may come in for, a short period of time, a couple of years, versus the people for whom we want this to be a professional career. And so all the way through, I think there's different approaches. Obviously, as you know, one of the things is looking at policies where we can pay staff more. So looking into opportunities where we can blend and braid funding for those that are paid for with public dollars, because one of the biggest challenges with any kind of fundraising scheme is that if we don't have more money to pay people, it's not like, McDonald's, where you raise the price of the burger and then you pay your employees more. Like, we can't raise the price on parents. And in many cases, if it's not publicly funded, that's even worse. So you have all of these parents that are at the lower end of the income spectrum who are scraping by to pay for after school programming and summer learning programming. And if the cost goes up, we're going to see even more kids drop off. And I think that's really one of the key takeaways we had from our America After 3 survey, which is that low-income families are the ones that are losing after school because they can't afford to pay and there's not enough public dollars to pay for them. So some of the creative things we've been looking at long-term is, and I would love to be able to delve into this more, is looking into ways we can partner with the Corporation for National Service. So getting a sense of how many AmeriCorps workers are in the field right now, and VISTA workers, particularly part-time AmeriCorps workers who could be college students and who could get paid to be part-time in the after-school space. And this could even be managed by VISTA, so really doubling up on some of that AmeriCorps Corporation for National Service. Another thought is absolutely, and it could be high school students, actually you have to be 18, so older high school students, is to look at not just allowing, and it could be college, it could be graduate level students, getting paid through AmeriCorps to work in after school space, but getting credit. So this is something, California is, and I know Jeff's on this, ahead of the rest of us, but whether you're studying to be a teacher or a therapist, there's a whole host of areas of study where it would make absolute sense for work with kids to be worth credit. And so to make it really attractive to get more people that already want to be working with kids into our space for a short period of time. So I think we're looking at, the policy front is very much how can we blend and braid some of the policies that are and funding streams that are out there so that we can provide more resources, both in the terms of benefits and salaries, but also what are other opportunities. And another thing to be thinking about very much, and again, we're this workforce survey, because we really don't have a good idea of who's in our workforce, it may be that some of this is a great entryway to get for professional development for people that are line staff, whether they're going to go into careers in after school or careers in something else, to be going back and taking classes, getting an education. So how can we really see this as a stepping stone? And I'd say I'm really excited about the connection with service, because I think it could be a way to get people to actually do service in the communities where they live and study, and really have a lot more bang for the buck because of those relationships, if we can make it happen. But I should flag, we don't have any funding to do this. So it's something that we're going to be looking into. It's also something particularly, I think, for those of you that are regional funders, to think about working with programs, because one of the things is, if after school programs can become AmeriCorps providers, often a philanthropic match can help that a lot. So there could be a role to really make this a reality. And we're hoping to just be pulling together some best practices and models so that they can be easily replicated. And there are state networks out there that are becoming AmeriCorps providers to try and make some of this happen too, which is super exciting.
Okay, that's awesome. And I think if people are, as they're listening to Jodi, thinking that that might be something that they'd like to learn more about, then definitely connect with Erik or Dan or Jodi in the chat so that you can make sure that you're part of that conversation. So Aleah, what are you seeing in California? If we're thinking about career advancement, career pathways, like how do you see the problem, and where do you see, where are you all going in California? I think California is often is farther ahead than others. I don't know if that's true with this particular thing. So yeah, let us know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, part of the challenge in California is that we need to navigate complex systems that are also dealing with, a size, right? And like economy of scale that makes things challenging. So I think a lot of what Jodi said around like credit for, college credit for working in expanded learning, being able to earn a wage while someone is going to school versus like stipends is something we're looking at. And that means working with the community college system, the state university systems. And, again, one of the challenges in California, there are 115 community colleges across the state. So there's lots of opportunity, but, the idea of like moving an entire system moves slowly. The other piece that is exciting in California that is being, really sort of led by the community college system is credit for prior learning as well. So recognizing, work experience, competencies that workers already have, and then, they get essentially credit for, competencies that they could already demonstrate to help move someone along in their educational pathway. And again, recognize and pay, pay these workers while they're working. And, Jodi, you touched on like the multiple different like sectors or career pathways that someone can explore, and from working in after school. And I think that's an opportunity as well. I'm sure in every state, there's a focus on recruiting and retaining educators, and credentialed teachers specifically. And so one of the wins is that we saw in California is, gonna mute someone. Oh, I can't mute them.
Sorry, Rebecca, you can you just check and make sure? And just everybody make sure you're muted. Sorry, Aleah.
No problem. One of the successes that we saw is that an existing teacher development fund that specifically, provided funding for credential or for classified employees to, to help them get their credential. We, did a lot of education to let legislators know that the majority of after-school workers in California are not actually school district employees. And so they don't have access to that classified school employee fund that would help them along in their pathway to become a teacher. And so we were able to expand access to expanded learning professionals, including employees of community-based organizations. And I think that's an example of, tapping into existing programs or funding streams or pathway projects, and ensure that those are truly accessible to after-school providers. The rubber hits the road here in figuring out like how are they actually, ensuring that after-school providers get these funds. And I think that speaks to the coordination piece that's needed, that it takes coordination to ensure that institutions of higher ed work with an after-school program provider, ensure that the classes and the coursework happen during a time of day where they can continue to work in after school. And we always speak to our friends at the California Teaching Fellows Foundation, who probably have the best model of partnering with institutions of higher ed, specifically around the pathway into teaching. And that's a very tangible, ask and need in terms of partnership is just scheduling. If we want, college students to be able to work in after school while they are pursuing their career pathway, we need them to be able to work and take coursework. And the other piece that we're exploring is apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship. And that actually, the model of registered apprenticeship is earn and learn. So you are taking coursework, you are working in a workplace, earning a wage, not a stipend, to really not only develop the individual and ensure that they're getting the training, work experience, and education, but that workplaces are really investing and looking at their work processes, their training processes, to move someone up. Registered apprenticeship also comes with a required wage increase, which is an interesting thing to explore, and I think is another interesting strategy. Is like, can we have a statewide or even national understanding of what wage salaries should look like? Probably not the amount, but a recent conversation I was in was, can we at least sort of put forward percentage increases that we would want to see, so that someone can actually envision a career, right, in and a pathway forward, not only in career advancement, but upward mobility as well.
Yeah, I think that one thing that struck me about what you said is really around the need for a coordination for all of this, or it just doesn't happen. So, which is something that Rebecca and I love to say, especially to funders, about how important it is to fund people to do that work. And we have one of the things that I think that this field does have is such a strong intermediary network, both at the state and the local levels, thanks to many of the funders on this call and the amazing work that people do. But it is really, really important to fund that. So Terri, what's happening in Missouri? Like, what would you say, first of all, about the issues that need to be solved around advancement opportunities and career pathways, and where do you see the role of a statewide network, specifically yours, on this?
Great, thank you. So to me, a lot of this really is that systems level coordination and building the systems and putting the pieces in place. When I think about career pathways, a lot of states have worked on career ladders or career lattices to try to outline what the expectations are for professionals in different roles or in different positions. A lot of that work has grown out of the early childhood world, but I think is applicable to the after school world also when thinking about systems. It's in my mind, more and more, I'm drawing the comparison to school districts that have their salary schedules, where it's very clear what it takes to be a teacher, and then when you will advance in pay and what happens after years of service. And we have some school-based after-school programs throughout our state that are on district salary schedules. And when those school-based program directors talk to the community-based program directors, they're in awe because there's so much turnover that they don't get to the point where they're having staff that would be advancing in that same way. But I think a systems piece is having those structures in place so that we can market the field. Jodi was talking about all of the different sectors that could be in the after school space for a short period of time. And I think that that's wonderful for filling many of our part-time positions that we're not expecting someone to stay in the field for that long, but a career lattice and a career pathway helps those that are inspired when they're in those entry-level positions to want to become the site facilitators and manage the team and run their site the way that they think that children and youth need. And then to advance to becoming an area supervisor, where they're working with 3 or 4 site facilitators to ensure the quality of those programs, and then move on to like a program administrator. And so it's not clear to someone when they are working direct frontline work that, hey, I can make a career out of this. I can be here for 20 years. And one of the things that we've done as a state network over the last 5 years is we've started a celebration of after school. We've combined it with our annual conference, and it's been a banquet, it's been a luncheon. This year we were back in person and we had it spread all over the conference. But we recognized a handful of professionals every year for the last 5 years for having 20, 25, 30, and 1 year even a 40 years of service in the field. And when we make these announcements, we see some of the fresh people in the group like, wow, like they've been not wow, like I'm tired, wow, but wow, like in awe that people have done what they love doing right now for that long. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do at the state level to both advertise that this is a long-term, it can be a long-term profession. We really need people to stay in this so that they can have that institutional knowledge to advance and help the lessons they've learned, the mistakes not to repeat themselves, and we can advance instead of always having that turnover and going around and around. Another thing I think, and we in Missouri do not have a career lattice yet. It's been in our discussions though, but I think something like that is a foundation in the system that as we say we want to increase salaries, and professionalize the field, we're going to need those expectations outlined in documents that we can share. And whether it's based on education or experience or a combination thereof, we need to have that clear language. I'm not sure. I love the idea of having something consistent, and we'll be following up with you, Aleah, on the expectations on the salary that would go along with a registered apprenticeship, because that's a big deal in Missouri also. But I think at least it's possible on a state level. May not be a national level right now, but on a state level, states need to have these expectations so that in common language, so that when the funding is available through whatever source, there's a framework to implement the changes. And I mean, that ties into other big issues with compensation and with incentive programs like Wages or Win, and with QRIS systems and tying in CCDF funds and different big things that are all part of the overall coordinated system.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I had just put in the chat, Ellen Gannett, I don't know if you're still with us, but I feel like the conversation about career lattices and ladders is one that's been going on for quite a while. And people must have work to share there. And maybe it's just a question of, sort of amplifying and uplifting and looking at maybe updating needed. But that is such a good point. And
yeah.
I know, oh, go ahead.
I just want to say we have them. We have a few.
Oh, Ellen,
And-
good.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
here. And I just want to say I'll
It's good
share
to hear
that.
you. Okay,
Good to hear you,
that's
Kathy.
awesome.
Yeah.
So throw that in the chat if you can.
Okay.
But I know we're going to run out of time. I think that one of the things that I'm thinking, listening to all of you, and thank you for all of those, just the incredible richness of everything that you said. And I want to remind people that they kind of said it on the fly because we crowdsourced which thing we were going to talk about. So kudos to you there. Clearly deeply, deeply in the work every day. But it seems like there's a couple of different things. One is thinking about how to both create and amplify and make sure that people know about career pathways where people stay in the out of school time and youth development field. And what does that look like? And how do you build a career in this field and all of the different roles that you can play, and how do you actually, create something which is going to be a living wage and allow you to be, prosperous and provide for yourself and your family. So that's one whole thing. And then the other thing that I'm hearing about is just ways to better connect with all of the career and post-secondary education development that exists in adjacent fields. Because if you're working in an after-school program, you are gaining incredibly valuable skills that you can then go on and be, I think that was in the chat from Ryan, a social worker, work in human development, work in child and family, work in so many different places, and clearly also teachers. But there's so many of these places that have their own pathways and their own career development set up, and the different roles that and experiences that you need to do to move into those fields. And so it seems like there's an amazing potential for after school to play a more central role in these. And that is really a systems challenge. So again, thinking about how do we do this on a systems level and tap the incredible people that we have working on the systems level and informed by people who are working on the ground. So I just love all of that. There's so much to do, but there is just like so much opportunity. And I really appreciate you all bringing that out in a super fast panel that we did today. So I think this idea of continuing to talk about a comprehensive vision for the workforce and all the different things in the agenda that we didn't actually get a chance to talk to today. If you like this idea, I mean, I think Rebecca and I really like this idea, but we're not doing this on our own. We're doing this with all of you. So Rebecca, can you throw our emails in the chat too? Like, reach out to us, go away and take some time off. That's what we're doing now. Or very soon. But after that, reach out to us and tell us what you think about this idea and how you would like to get involved in further conversations that we will continue to have in 2022. So we are meeting again. It's the third Friday. Rebecca just told me, and now it's gone on my chat. What is the date? Oh, 21st. Okay. So all of you who are registered for this, you will get the reminder. It weirdly comes from Zoom, as you know, because you've actually, you have dismantled that obstacle and you're here today. So you know that the reminder comes from Zoom. We're going to meet Friday, January 21st at noon ET or whatever time that is for you. We don't know exactly what we're doing yet, but we'd love to hear from you between now and then and see how we can, either take up one of these these issues, or maybe we'll be celebrating the passage of Build Back Better and trying to figure out what to do. I'm knocking on everything as I say that because I don't want to jinx us. But thank you so much again for your time and your community in this space. Rebecca, do you have anything?
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a safe
Yeah,
holiday.
really so much appreciate it, and have a warm and bright and safe holiday, and we will see you in the new year. Take care of it, everybody.